Don't ruin any of your good lines just yet, because I have a feeling that he's going to feature in our first feature this morning, which is the Gillette Performance Rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTBAM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Every Monday morning, we kick off the show with the Gillette Performance Rankings. It's your opportunity to win a Gillette starter pack. All you got to do is tell us who would you put in the red, in the amber, or in the green. And at the end of the show this morning, we will announce a winner. It's very simple. Red, bad weekend. Amber, meh. And green, obviously, a sensational weekend. I suspect, as we've talked about already, Phil Mickelson's going to be in the green. But who is in the red?
Brendan Rodgers and Leicester City are in the red. History repeated itself, unfortunately, for Leicester yesterday. Missing out on Champions League football again, second year in a row on the final day. And for the second year in a row, they took 4 points from their final 5 matches. They're 2-1 up against Spurs with 15 minutes left. Villa are doing a job for them. Villa are doing them a huge favour. They're beating Chelsea. And Leicester blew it. Kasper Schmeichel scores an own goal, comes out to punch a corner clear, gets it with the wrong side of his fist and punches it into his own net. And Leicester then, as they went chasing, got caught on the counter-attack by Spurs. Gareth Bale comes on, it's devastating. And it's just a massive blow. I know that Leicester fans would say, give them a choice between FA Cup and top 4, and they would always go with the FA Cup for what it meant for them last week. But it didn't have to be a choice. They could have had both of them. It was right there in their hands. Just grasp it. And yeah, they have massively faltered. When you think their only win in those 5 games was basically against the Manchester United B team, where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had rested everybody, to end up losing right at the end to Chelsea and then again to Spurs yesterday. It's not disastrous for a club like Leicester City, but what a missed opportunity. Like, will they get a chance again 3 seasons in a row?
It doesn't feel like they're going to get this chance again, because it feels like this was a season where Liverpool wobbled because of their centre-back injury crisis and some other reasons. This was a season where Chelsea sacked their manager after a horrific start, but then discovered that they've got, it looks like, a good manager who knows, an adult in the room at least, who knows what he's doing, although we'll talk about that in 1 second. And then you would expect that Manchester United and Manchester City will be there again, and that both of them will significantly invest this summer to strengthen their squad. So this was their window to latch on to those top 4, become a Premier League team, have an extra 100, 150 million on the budget. They don't need any money, so they could, they're not trying to take money out of the club, it seems like, from an ownership perspective, so they could have invested again, doubled down, kept Brendan Rodgers and moved on, but that didn't happen. Brendan Rodgers is in the red. Should it not be Kasper Schmeichel in the red here? I feel like Rodgers is the one who ends up carrying the can. This is a thin squad. Manager, eh? He's the thin. They've had their injury crisis as bad as anybody almost. They've got a very thin squad because, let's face it, they're not a super club, and they're trying to limp it on to the super clubs. And you're blaming him. It feels almost like a little bit like Enda Call and the Celtic fans.
I'm a huge Brendan Rodgers supporter. I think he's done a phenomenal job, but when you get into this position, you got to seal the deal. And this is 3 big Premier League seasons. You think back to 2014 with Liverpool, win your final 3 games, you'll win the title.
That's what I'm talking about. You've never forgiven him.
I think
you're a big fan of his, but the first thing you bring up is something that actually is Steven Gerrard's fault.
But what I'm saying is there's a pattern emerging here of getting right to the finish line and stumbling Foynaben style right when it's there. Listen, we probably would have said last year that was Leicester's chance. It's a crazy old football world. Would you be shocked if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked by Christmas? I don't think you would. Would you be sacked if 1 or 2 of those other clubs that we expect to gain momentum didn't actually take advantage of it? The problem for Leicester is they're not going to be in the mix for Harry Kane, Erling Haaland, Kylian Mbappe. And without Champions League football and with the success they've had, everyone's looking at them. So our team's looking at Wesley Fofana and thinking, 60 million quid, massive improvement. Are they looking at Yuri Tielemans? Yes, let's bring him in here. But they've shown they can reinvent themselves again and again. So,
well, if they can keep those guys for 1 more season, it's what we always said about Monaco. If Monaco could keep some players, they could go very far, but they can never keep them. So let's move on. Who else is in the red?
Well, I could have gone for Chelsea, but they just about survived yesterday, despite losing 3 of the last 4. Maurizio Pochettino I put in there. It's a very simple job when you're Paris Saint-Germain manager. Win the league. Managers have got sacked for far, far less at Paris Saint-Germain. They ended up losing out last night to Lille. So they'd won the last 3. Pochettino comes in, replaces Thomas Tuchel because to bring them to the promised land of Champions League final, Champions League victory. Can't do that and can't even get the basics done with a team including Neymar and Kylian Mbappe. Christophe Galtier has done an unbelievable job at Lille. They just about got the job done. They beat Angers 2-1 last night. But Lille are, we're talking about Leicester. Lille sell their best players every year. Watched them a lot in Champions League and Europa League. And they're always great to watch. But you look at their average age, it's always 20, 21, 22. They bring in the best young players from around France, around Belgium, and then they sell them for big money, and that's what they've done. Like last summer, Gabriel went to Arsenal, Victor Osimhen went to Napoli, they sold Nicola Pepe the year before that to Arsenal. Every year there's this massive turnover, but they went and they signed Burak Yilmaz, sort of a journeyman Turkish striker who spent his entire career in Turkey, comes in this season, he's an absolute revelation, scores a bucket load of goals, and that is enough to get Lille past Paris Saint-Germain. So I think Pochettino, if you don't win the Ligue 1 title, you're always going to find yourself in the red. And doesn't seem to be major speculation around his future, but when you consider what they sacked Thomas Tuchel for, he's got to be feeling it.
Well, I think maybe the fact that he's only had them since Christmas and they were already in a difficult enough situation, but they definitely had the opportunity to win it. Was it Lille that, obviously Lille is very important in Irish football history, but was it Lille that you went missing and we thought you disappeared? Was that the
Yeah. Well, funny. I was looking at the celebrations in the
statistics that like.
Who's
going to ring Nathan's family and tell them that he's disappeared?
Well, the worst part of that day, which was the morning after Robbie Brady's goal, we had a bag mix-up where Keane Murtagh, our former colleague, reason he's a former colleague, took my bag and left his bag, but his bag had all my stuff in it, my train ticket, my phone charger, so I was stuck in Lille with pretty much nothing and no way of getting back to Paris. And I thought, like yourself, my family would be very worried about where am I? I think I can get back to Versailles about 7 o'clock the next evening. No, I rang my wife just to explain where I was. She was like, "What do you mean? I really haven't been looking for you. I hadn't even noticed you weren't there." Yeah, I was looking at the celebrations in the square in Lille last night at about 11:30, thinking, lads, enjoy it quickly because generally in Lille they like to shut this down pretty quickly.
Yeah, it wasn't a time for late night celebrations. Maybe they thought that we were going to be like the England fans and therefore we'd be on the rampage, but we weren't. We were having a good time. We did find that one Italian restaurant. That's a very nice, warm, fuzzy, following Irish football memory where, for one brief moment, the Hacks laid down the accoutrements of war and smoked some peace pipes and had some.
It's almost as if the result had something to do with that.
Okay, so who's in the? This is okay. Who's in amber this week?
Well, I'm putting them in amber because it was a mixed bag for the Irish golfers.
We should have had somebody in red and we should have had 2 in green. That's what I'm saying.
Quite possibly.
So
I think
the average
you're
is
right.
amber.
So the average was amber, brought down by Rory McIlroy, who really wasn't a factor in this tournament at all. Put his opening tee shot on Thursday straight in the water. Never really a contender. Couldn't follow up in Quail Hollow, which I don't think is massively surprising because what he did at Quail Hollow, firstly, he plays that course better than any course in the world. His iron play, his scrambling was exceptional. He had one of his best ever putting rounds that week, but his driver was off. And a lot of people were assuming, well, the driver's the best part of his game. It'll come back quite quickly and everything else will stay. Everything else didn't stay and his driver didn't come back. You can see he's still having a lot of work to do with Pete Cowan. We were having a good debate in the Golf Weekly watch-along yesterday with Gary Murphy, and he was saying how, Rory, the one thing that's a positive for Rory is he has no scar tissue over the last 7 years of blowing majors. There's been no real final day blowouts. But to flip it at, he hasn't been in contention. He's rarely, if ever, been in contention. It's 23 majors since he last won one. And, Gary felt that Rory is still, on his day, the best player in the world. But how often do we see that? Swing is clearly a work in progress. There's the conflict maybe if Bob Rotella wants him to go back thinking like he did when he was a kid, whereas Pete Cowan is moving him away from the swing he had when he was a kid. So it doesn't look like it's going to be a quick fix for Rory. So that brought the average down for the Irish golfers. But, geez, were there 2 men happier out in the golf course in the whole world yesterday than Padraig Carrington and Shane Lowry, drawn together in the final round, and they just had an absolute ball. I
mean, on Thursday, I pitched the notion of a Kardashian-style program where we follow these 2 all the way up to the moment of the decision where Harrington has to say, "I love you more than my brother, but actually I can't pick you for the Ryder Cup team. Performances like yesterday from Lowry will make it a little bit easier. I mean, obviously, he hasn't had a win, but there were enough ranking points, I presume, to help scuttle him up the table a bit.
It does. I still think Harrington's in such a difficult position and probably isn't helping himself with the way he talks about Shane, because he talks him up as to how the course will suit Shane at Whistling Straits, how a Ryder Cup week will suit Shane because he doesn't get overly excited about things, how he can manage himself. But to pick a rookie ahead of some of the likely names in contention, like the last rookie, Eduardo Molinari at Gleneagles, won the week before in Scotland and had already won earlier that summer in Scotland and was the next guy on the list. It was very easy to pick him, and his brother was on the team. Lowry, you still feel, needs to show some real form in the couple of weeks leading up to the tournament to get picked. But there was a time yesterday, definitely, where it got back to sort of 5-6 under. Everyone was dropping shots, and you thought the two of them were in the clubhouse and 2 under par. Lowry's putter all week was quite inconsistent. He missed a very straightforward birdie putt on 18 that would have got him to 3 under, and it felt like there were a few of them during the day. So that's been his story all season. When the putter is hot, he is performing very, very well. When the putter's not really working, I'd say he ends up with a lot of regrets. But Harrington, this is Harrington's first top 10 on the PGA Tour in over 5 years. Obviously, the course was a big factor. There was a lot of experienced heads up there contending last night. Harrington turns 50 in a few weeks' time. He played with Phil in the first 2 rounds, so it's almost a dream week for Harrington, where he plays with Phil, one of his best mates on tour, for 2 rounds. They're hopping off each other, and then he gets to play with Lowry in the final round. And said afterwards he was a little bit tentative in the final few holes with his putter in particular, that maybe there were a few more opportunities he could have taken. But when Harrington and Lowry are flying, there's definitely a different buzz when you're sitting on your couch that, oh yes. And we're right in the heat of the golfing season. We're a month away from a US Open at Torrey Pines, and then Shane Lowry will finally, well, maybe not finally give it up, but his long reign as Open champion may come to an end at Royal St. George. So yeah, the two of them, if Harrington won, you're in the awkward position of, does he have to give up the Ryder Cup captaincy to play in it? He's not quite there, but the love of the game is still there as strong as ever. We had him on Golf Weekly a couple of weeks back, and he was in his practice room in his house, and I was asking him, what do you do for downtime? How many hours a day are you spending thinking about golf? And he said, every hour, every waking minute is still either practicing or thinking about it or resting so I can go practice. And I might binge watch something for 3 or 4 hours just to force myself not to be thinking about golf. But it's remarkable at that age to still care that much and to still want it that much. And I wouldn't be surprised if Harrington nicks a win somewhere along the way. Maybe not another major, but another tournament.
Yeah.
Because Phil has shown what can be done.
Well, look, we've 3 minutes left and we've got 2 in green. So let's move straight on to Phil Mickelson, because he is the big winner of the weekend. Gaelic football is the other big winner of the weekend, but we'll talk about Phil Mickelson first.
This was just a magical day. This was up there with Tiger at Augusta in 2019. Phil Mickelson, 50 years of age, oldest ever winner of a major. Julius Boros, 1968 at 48. This record had lasted for over 50 years. I had felt it was going to go quite quickly. It's strange that it lasted that long when you look at the fitness of the older players now. But Phil had little or nothing to show on the PGA Tour in recent months. He's been winning on the Champions Tour easily. But to rock up here, 30 years on from his first PGA Tour win, I was pointing out during the week, his first major appearance was the same week Ireland played England at Italian 90.
Wow.
That is the longevity of Phil Mickelson. He's on to 6 majors now alongside Nick Faldo and Lee Trevino. He's heading now to a US Open, which is the only one he misses from the Grand Slam. It's at Torrey Pines in San Diego, where he lives. He's been runner-up in this 6 times. The hype is going to be insane. But the scenes at 18 last night were reminiscent of Tiger, where the crowd just swarmed around. It was a bit more fractious. There was a bit more tension in the air, where Phil, I think somebody grabbed him, pulled him back as he's walking down the fairway at one stage. And he's a 50-year-old man. The back probably isn't in the best shape. He didn't look happy about that. Koepka's stuck in the middle of it, and he's getting kneed on the knee in there. He's not happy about it. And this was as good a major as we've seen in recent times. The course was just sensational. Birdie or bogey possible on every hole. And at that front 9, Mickelson would make a mistake. Then Koepka would make a mistake. Mickelson had pulled out an unbelievable shot. Koepka would follow him up. And eventually Koepka, his putter just let him down. He'll be massively disappointed.
Yeah.
Massively disappointed that he didn't kick on and put more pressure. But he missed so many short putts. But even then, Phil on the back nine, like, goes in the water on 13, bogey on 14. Koepka gets a birdie at 15, and then Phil steps up at 16, hits a 366-yard drive, 5 yards past Koepka, who's just driven straight down the middle. The longest drive of the week. And from there, you kind of felt it was over, even though there was still a few nerves on 17. But it was Thursday to Saturday wasn't very Phil-like in that it was very solid. Like, what people love about Phil is how enigmatic he's been and how he'll always take on the shot. This was steady as you go Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sunday we saw a bit more of the real Phil, a bit more of the magic. And he's just strange. He's so likable, but in so many ways he really shouldn't be, because there's a gigantic ego in there. Even I've seen in the last few minutes he's been on Twitter replying to everybody who's, giving him a bit of abuse or rant, and just been completely over the top into how highly he rates himself. But he just about gets away with it because, I don't know, I think he understands he's a bit of a parody of himself at this stage. But 50 years of age, he has still got it.
Yeah, good stuff. The performance rankings also has football in green, but we've used up all that time. We're going to get to why football was in green this week with Anthony Moyles a little bit later on, but that is this week's performance rankings.
OTBAM's performance rankings with Gillette.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio.